Okay. Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to another episode of Pierre. Today's November 26th, 2025. Wow, whoops. I keep forgetting what day it is. Today's November 26th, 2025, and I think I figured it out. Pipelines in Canada, to be or not to be? That is the main question. Turns out it's to not be. I just got an email with a little, I think, inside scoop. I haven't fully been able to fact check the validity of this, but this does make sense. And we're going to take a look at it because this is starting to get a little cuckoo. I'll be honest. I feel like the wind has been taken straight out of my sails for the past few months. I'm feeling personally just a little bit unmotivated about Canadian politics, about the future of Canada. We keep getting told these promises, and sometimes I kind of believe them. There is a part of me that actually wants to give Mark Carney a bit of a chance. Crazy, right? I came into politics when Trudeau in like 2022. That's when I was like, okay, I'm going to speak up about this. Because I saw what he was doing during COVID and the things he was saying. I was like, that's freaking weird. I was living in my van at the time. And I was like, this is bizarre. This is bizarre. And when I came into politics, I started paying attention to Canadian politics. There was already a lot of hatred for Trudeau. So I like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Like, I'm seeing what's happening. A lot of other people feel the same way. Let's also fucking hate the guy. And now we're starting fresh, sort of. Not really, but sort of. With this like Messiah banker that's full of more promises. And there's a part of me that I'm just putting like the YouTube stuff aside. There's a part of me that's like, you know what? We gotta try to give him a chance. It only makes sense. And I don't know if I can keep doing that because he's just not getting stuff done. He's full of fake promises. And I've kind of reached my limit with this, with the fake promises, with the posturing, with the line. And now I see it clearly. They always have a scapegoat. There's full of promises, but there's always an exit ramp. And it happens with all political parties for everything. We saw this with the budget vote, where the Conservatives were like, yeah, we're going to vote against the budget, but we're going to make it look real close with a couple of scapegoats, one MP who quit, one MP who crossed the floor, and another MP who had jaw surgery, with a bunch of pre-recorded videos to be released afterwards. They always have an alibi. They always have a scapegoat. It happens with the Conservatives. It happens with the Liberals. It happens with the NDP. It happens in politics. That's politics. I don't agree with it, but that's the name of the game. Nobody's going to reinvent the wheel. It is what it is. It shouldn't be this way, but it is what it is, and that's just how it is right now. And so with the pipeline stuff, again, more false promises by what seems to be all political parties. Canada wants to know if there's going to be a pipeline built from Alberta to the west coast of Canada so that we can export directly from the ocean to other countries outside of America, rely on less American dependence. You've heard that from everybody. You've heard that from Conservatives. You've heard that from Liberals. You've heard that from everybody. But it's just not going to happen. And the scapegoat in this instance is First Nations. You see, our politicians can say, you know what? It's almost like this. I'm going to promise you that today we're going to go out and play beach volleyball. You and I, we're going to go out, you and me, we're going to go to the beach. We're going to wear our shorts. We're going to have t-shirts. We're going to bring sunscreen. We're going to bring a picnic. It's going to be a phenomenal time. But I know that it's actually forecasted to be -10 today, and it's going to snow. And I know that no matter how much you actually want to go and play beach volleyball with me, I know it's going to be impossible, but I'm going to let you think that it's possible. So you know what? You and me, let's go to the beach and let's play beach volleyball together. And we go to open that door and you're so excited. And I know in the back of my mind what the outcome is going to be, but you're so excited. You open the door and you're like, yeah, it's snowing. And you tell me, I don't think we can go play beach volleyball. And I say, oh, are you sure? Are you sure? And you say, yes, of course I'm sure. How can we go? It's outside. It's -10. It's snowing. We can't physically play beach volleyball. Oh, okay. Well, next time, buddy. Next time you and I will go. We'll figure something out. That's how politics works in Canada. Or maybe that's just how politics works in general. So how does that translate to not beach volleyball? It's like a real world example. Well, I'm going to tell you. You and me, we're going to build a pipeline. We're going to build a pipeline and we're going to stop sending stuff to America. Okay? We're going to send stuff to Europe, to Asia, to the rest of the world. But you know who's in the way? First Nations. They're never going to allow it. But I'm going to convince you that it's going to happen no matter what. And then it comes time to the First Nations to come to the table and agree or disagree on the pipeline. And they always disagree without fail. It's like clockwork. It's crazy. It's almost like if you were a betting person, you should never bet against the First Nations because they always get what they want. And so that's what's happening right now. Take that beach volleyball weird example that I came up with off the cuff, off the top of my head, and let's apply it to the pipeline. Mark Carney knows the First Nations are never going to approve a pipeline. Other politicians and other political parties know the First Nations are never going to approve the pipeline because Canada has this thing where they trump the government, right? Like the First Nations are like, hey, we know that this would bring in $10 bajillion and save humanity in Canada, but it's our sacred land. Oh, shucks. I guess we're out of luck. That happens time and time and time again, whether you like it or not. And it's becoming a bit of a problem for a lot of people, especially for projects. So I just got this email and, well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at this email. This is a joint statement of the Haisla Nation and District of Kitimat, where the pipeline is supposed to be going. This just came out today, November 26th. Haisla Traditional Territory, British Columbia. Yesterday afternoon, Haisla Nation and District of Kitimat met with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. The meeting provided an opportunity to discuss sustainable energy development in Canada, specifically the role of Haisla Nation Traditional Territory has and will continue to play in securing prosperity for Indigenous peoples, British Columbians, and Canadians. Haisla Nation and the District of Kitimat have been at the forefront of establishing Canada as a sustainable natural resource superpower, including supporting the development of Canada's first pipeline to Tidewater in more than 70 years. Together, our communities have proven that Rio Tinto, LNG Canada, Cedar LNG, and Coastal GasLink, that we can do big things for Canada. Haisla Nation and the District of Kitimat are focused on leading sustainable nation-building developments that are aligned with our shared community values of respect, collaboration, environmental protection, and Indigenous leadership. Stick with me, folks. Stick with me. It gets better. Okay, I promise you. We invite partners to develop new projects with us that respect our values and the role we have played to date in supporting the greater Canadian economy. Over a decade ago, the community of Kitimat voted to oppose the Northern Gateway project. The Haisla Nation, who were firmly against the proposal at the time, still maintain the same position today regarding an oil pipeline and export facility in their territory. This position was articulated firmly to Premier Smith during the meeting. Haisla Nation and the District of Kitimat look forward to working with government at all levels, industry, neighboring nations, and partners to support economic development and diversification in the Kitimat region for the benefit of Canadians in alignment with federal commitments to Indigenous reconciliation and our values. Okay. So I'm an idiot. I think I might actually be borderline a little bit retarded in many, many ways. So I went and was like, you know what? My reading comprehension of that is not very good. It's not good at all. So I relied on modern technology because on the surface, maybe that seems like, okay, that's like a weird political email or letter that was sent out. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Tell me. I don't even know. So I relied on modern technology. ChatGPT. I'm uploading a photo of a political statement. Can you summarize it for me and tell me what the outcome of this is? And it gave me a massive breakdown. Woohoo! Look at that. That's longer than the actual letter. And I said it, put it in simple terms, please. Cut the summary in half for me, please. Here's the tighter, cleaner version. Same meaning, half the length. Now we're talking my language. The condensed summary. Haisla Nation and the District of Kitimat met with Premier Smith to discuss sustainable energy. They emphasized their strong support for LNG projects. Okay, we know that. They made clear that they remain open to new projects, but only those that aligned with their values, environmental protection, collaboration, and Indigenous leaderships. Here's the condensed outcome. 1, no new decisions have been made. 2, the Haisla Kitimat reinforce yes to LNG and no to oil pipelines. 3, they project unity and control over what development happens on their land. And 4, the door stays open to future LNG and clean energy partnerships, but only on their terms. Now, GPT did ask me if I wanted a short and punchy on-camera script, to which I didn't reply. Maybe I should have. But this is kind of crazy to me that we have a federal movement right now that's all about uniting Canadians. Like, hey, we're all going to have to make a little bit of sacrifices, and we're not going to each get 100% of what we want. We're going to get 60, 50, 40% of what we want, but we all have to chip in and sacrifice a little bit. That's been said and reiterated by our federal leaders, by our federal government, by our provincial leaders, by our provincial governments across the board in different ways. But the summary and the main meat and potatoes of what's been said is that we all need to work together and come together as Canadians and Canada first, blah, 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 blah. All but the First Nations. So we have an opportunity to actually export oil through pipelines from Alberta to the coast of British Columbia, to which the First Nations are like, no, we'll do LNG, but we're not going to do oil. We don't want that on our land, and there's nothing you can do about it. And they're kind of correct. The way Canada stands right now, there is nothing that they can do about it. I don't even think regular police have any jurisdiction, any ability to do anything on First Nations land. Like, that's how protected they are. They're like their own country within a country. And there's nothing that the government can do about it. Or is there? Danielle Smith, earlier in October, said this, that Alberta will look to send more oil to the U.S. if Carney fails to put a pipeline on nation building lists. So we're going to reread this article from October. Danielle Smith says if Carney fails to include her new pipeline pitch on the list of nation-building projects within the next 7 weeks, she will have to intensify her efforts to build north to south. Everybody wants to be Team Canada and find new markets, but if it means let's all work together to get our products to market, but not Alberta's, well, then that would be the pathway I'd have to pursue. So Alberta already sees this. Danielle Smith knows this. And that's why you're seeing an increase, a rise in like Alberta's separatism, because at the end of the day, Alberta consistently gets screwed over by the federal government. But don't worry, guys. We're going to go play beach volleyball, even though it's cold outside and you just haven't seen the weather yet. We're going to have a pipeline built. We're going to have a pipeline built. Heck, I even fall for it at times where I'm like, shit. That's kind of convincing. I feel like we're going to get Carney's getting along with Smith. Smith is getting along with Carney. Surely there must be a pipeline that's actually going to get built. No, the First Nations is always blocking it. So I think that we're going to go back to the whole Alberta having a deal with the United States at some point. And this is the danger of Canada sticking up the middle finger to America, is that no matter what you say, what you want to do, no matter who's in power, there's always going to be a scapegoat. There's always going to be somebody somewhere that has more power and influence to veto projects. That's how Canada has historically worked. We don't have to agree with it to be able to see and recognize that that's what's happening right now and will probably continue to happen. And I don't know if there's any federal government that could actually supersede the First Nations, even if the Conservatives were somehow in power. If they just said, you know what, fuck you, we're just going to do it anyway, you would have massive backlash, insane backlash. Like, pipeline construction would probably get sabotaged. There would be insane amounts of protests in like all of these kind of remote areas, and it would be sabotaged. Like, it just, I don't know if it would actually happen because First Nations are so heavily protected and people believe that they need to remain a veto power above the federal government, above nation building projects. That's just how Canada works. And this isn't me like harping on the Conservatives. The Conservatives seem to actually have a bit more of a better relationship with the First Nations. You've seen that time and time again during campaigns, during the elections and stuff like that. But ultimately, the way that Canada has historically set up protections for First Nations against projects like this, we're stuck in a repetitive cycle where we just don't really get stuff done if it happens to cross or have to go over First Nations territories. And if you're thinking, well, why don't we just go like around them? No, it's just not feasible to do that. The lay of the land, the extra amount of mileage it would take to go over, like, it's just not possible. The answer to that is no. So either First Nations agree to a deal, which they would be getting insane royalties over. Insane royalties, like beyond what you could ever imagine. Or there's not plowing through them. Like, that's just not going to happen, not in today's day and age. Or Canada increases its trade of oil and gas with America. The separatist movement continues to rise because Albertans continue to see that, hey, you keep getting the shit end of the stick. No matter how you look at it, you can't go east. Quebec would never allow it. You can't go west. The First Nations in British Columbia would never allow it. There's no other option. Alberta becoming its own sovereign nation or becoming having a more economic merger with America seems to really be the only path forward. And that's kind of nerve-wracking. It kind of is, because we're seeing right now in real time the collapse of Canada. Quebec has arguably a bit of a stronger separatist movement. Maybe not at this current time. Maybe so, maybe not. But just historically, they've already tried to do it twice, and they almost succeeded. They lost by like 10 votes, a little bit more, but they barely lost the ability to separate in the past. And so Alberta is going through its first infancy phase of separation now, and the movement is growing and growing and growing. And when you see stuff like this, false promises, hey, we're going to have a pipeline, then we find out that the First Nations never allow it, more and more people start to realize, oh yeah, Alberta is just never getting out of it. Like they're never getting out of that situation, unless two things: unless they separate, or unless they have their own deal with America. And if that happens, that's probably going to increase the separatist movement anyways. And people in Alberta and politicians in Alberta would probably start to say to America, you got to start recognizing us as our own independent country or nation, right? And this takes years. This takes a long time to start to unravel, but we're seeing it happen in real time right now. And so I want to pass a question off to you. How do you feel about this? How do you feel that we're being consistently lied to? Hey, we're going to get a pipeline. We're going to get these things, these projects done. We guarantee it. We're going to get it done. When the First Nations, who have the highest level of veto power somehow in this country, keep saying, go fuck yourself. How does that make you feel? How does that make you feel to be a regular Canadian? Do you accept this? Does it make you angry? Does it make you a little upset? Let me know what you guys think down below. Yeah, That's off to a pretty intense start. Oh, holy smokes. Kind of crazy out there. But now we're going to take a look at the news and what CBC and CTV have to say about the pipeline. And I can guarantee you that the mainstream media is holding on to the hope that, I think that we're going to get a deal. I think that we're going to figure this out. Carney's figuring it out for us. We're going to find a compromise because Canada first, right? We got to stick it to Trump. But Canada is its own worst enemy. Our provinces fight against each other. Our provinces act like already they're their own little independent countries without being independent countries. I mean, for crying out loud, you couldn't buy like a certain amount of wine in Ontario and bring it to British Columbia without breaking a certain set of laws. It's very bizarre. Now they've tried to, squash those intra-provincial trade barriers, but Canada is a very elitist country where each province functions on its own and wants to almost cause a little bit of harm to other provinces. Like Canada is the umbrella and each province is the pieces that hold the umbrella together, but they want the whole thing for themselves. And when you can't work with your neighbors, when you can't work with your peers, then the whole thing kind of collapses. That's Canada.
The prospect of this possible pipeline prompted reaction from several BC Liberal MPs last week.
What's important is what Minister Hodgson and the Prime Minister said, is that for any projects, particularly anything that's going to be listed on the national project or the major projects list, it's going to have provincial buy-in and Indigenous support.
There has to be Indigenous consent. The province's impact have to be on board, and those are the conditions. And right now, I don't see that. And it's all hypothetical.
Projects would need the support of the jurisdictions in which they're being built. So I think there's got to be some conversations with the Premier. And in terms of First Nations, I mean, there needs to be significant support. It doesn't necessarily have to be unanimous. It wasn't in the case of Trans Mountain, but there needs to be significant support. And at present time, I don't think there is.
Okay, so that was then. How do these Liberals feel now that we know more about that deal? Joining me now is BC Liberal MP Jonathan Wilkinson, who also previously served as the Minister of Environment and the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Jonathan Wilkinson, it's good to see you, sir. Thank you for being here today.
Good to see you. Thank you very much.
I've been speaking with members of the Liberal caucus, and in particular the BC Liberal caucus, who use the words seething, anxious, and angry to describe their reaction to news of an MOU coming on Thursday with Alberta. How would you describe what is happening right now?
Well, I guess what I would say, whether it's to my colleagues or others, is everybody should take a little bit of a breath. At the end of the day, let's see what the MOU says when it actually comes out. I am quite confident that the MOU will contain a number of the provisions that the Prime Minister has said publicly before, which is, need to seek the support of the jurisdiction in which a project takes place, and needs to have significant support amongst Indigenous communities, and ultimately, it needs to ensure that we are also thinking, if projects move ahead, that we account for any incremental emissions, and those are accommodated in the context of an updated climate plan. So all of those things, I think, are important, but we shouldn't prejudge sort of what's in the MOU before it's actually unveiled.
But the idea of the MOU is to move towards an eventual bitumen pipeline. I mean, obviously, Alberta is acting as the proponent now. This is to clear a path for them to maybe find a private sector proponent. And as I understand it, Mr. Wilkinson, Alberta will be expected to engage with British Columbia and the First Nations to get their whatever level of support they can get there if they're going to function as the proponent. But a lot of your colleagues are just worried about the political costs of that, because it has been an article of faith for the last 10 years, no northern pipeline through British Columbia with the Liberal Party of Canada. And now it seems like it's a possibility.
Well, again, I just think people need to take a bit of a step back. I mean, for all major projects, whether it's this project or it's liquid natural gas or mines or transmission lines, there will always be concerns that are raised with respect to how do you do this in a manner that promotes economic opportunity, but is consistent with, commitments to Indigenous communities, that are consistent with environmental obligations. I would say that opposition to a bitumen pipeline typically falls on worries about environmental impacts, and that's particularly true in the North Coast. Like, people forget that the tanker ban that was formalized under Mr. Trudeau, it was a moratorium since 1972, and it relates to the difficulty in terms of navigation on the North Coast. It relates to the fact that infrastructure that exists in the Vancouver Harbor does not exist up there to assure that you can actually address issues as they arise effectively. And it's also concerns that Indigenous communities have. And Indigenous communities have a constitutional right to be consulted and accommodated. So those are very legitimate concerns. By the same token, oil and gas are fully legal products in the same way that electricity is. And so engaging a conversation about whether this is something that works environmentally, that works in terms of First Nations engagement, that works economically is always going to be healthy.
Right, but here we are,
I understand that First Nations need to be consulted for stuff on their land. Like, that makes sense, right? In the same way that it makes sense that if there's a new development that's going on where you live and you're a homeowner, and maybe you've got several acres of land and this company that's building needs to cross your land. So do they just cross your land, or do they consult you first and try to either buy that piece of land or pay you some form of royalties or whatever? Like, that makes sense. Okay. You own the land. Somebody wants to use your land. They don't just get to do so for free, right? Like that makes sense. That concept makes sense. Anyone who's in that position would absolutely agree with that. Like, let's say you own 50 acres of farmland out in the boonies, and the government's like, hey, you know what? We're doing like a high-speed rail. Can we use your land to cross? Here's what we'll pay you. And you're like, well, maybe a little bit more. And they're like, okay, sure. That makes sense. One time payout, bada bing, bada boom, on your way. That makes sense. Where it stops making sense is when the government says, hey, we're in a bit of a pickle right now, and everybody has to make sacrifices. But you know what? Canadians are awesome at making sacrifices. And Canadians know how to struggle. We struggle the best, better than anybody else, because we've been struggling for so long. And look, we haven't had a civil war or an uprising. So, of course, we must be okay with the struggle. So we have to continue to struggle a little bit longer together. So we're all going to have to make sacrifices. Does that sound familiar? Trudeau and Carney have said that, if I'm not mistaken. So we all need to make some sacrifices so that we can get stuff done, because there's like crazy bad things happening outside of our country. The biggest one is Trump. This isn't my opinion. This is what the Canadian government's been saying. Okay. The biggest threat to Canada is Trump. Then there's also like all of these wars and all this other stuff going on. And so Canadians got to struggle together, and we got to come together and struggle together, struggle together. We all need to make sacrifices. So now we've come to the point in time where it's time for us to make sacrifices, and we talk about nation building projects. So we got to build more houses. We're going to reduce immigration. We're going to oil and gas. Canada's got a lot of it. Let's start exporting it to other countries, because our biggest threat is America and the fact that they're so unstable, whatever the hell the government tries to say about Trump. Sure. Whether you believe it or not, sure. Yeah, we should diversify our market anyways. Like, that makes sense. You don't want all your eggs in one basket. So now it's time for us to all work together, struggle together, together we struggle. And one group in Canada is exempt from that. It's not black people. It's not disabled people. It's not women. It's not children. It's not black disabled female children. It's not the 2S LGBTQI plus. It's First Nations. They're the ones that have the veto over everything. And I think this is where Canadians really start to get a little pissed off about it. It's like, hey, everywhere you grew up in Canada, in like pretty modern times, right? If you were in school in the past like 20, 30 years, there's a bit of an education process with the First Nations, especially in school nowadays. I think that truth and reconciliation is actually mandatory in some schools and some grades, if I'm not mistaken. So there's like a whole learning curve in Canada, like a forced mandatory learning curve about our First Nations. So in Canada, we grow up and we're taught about First Nations and how white people colonized Canada and we took their land and we took over and now we're having to pay this perpetual debt. Like summarize things. Okay. So there's like a natural empathy towards First Nations. So we see First Nations reserves and we're like, oh man, okay, I wish the best for them or whatever. But like all of that empathy goes out the window for a lot of people when struggle together we struggle. We need to all kumbaya, hold hands because we're under threat of external factors outside of the country. Struggle together we struggle. We all need to make sacrifices. Sacrifice together we sacrifice. Struggle together we struggle. Repeat, rinse and repeat. Propaganda, CBC, CTV, politicians, everywhere you go, it's the same thing. Trump is bad. Tariffs are bad. Struggle together we struggle. We need to fix this. We all need to make sacrifices. Everybody needs to make sacrifices. Black people, white people, Asian people, immigrants, children, the disabled, the elderly, US LGBTQI plus, everybody needs to make sacrifices. We're cutting public sector jobs. 70,000 public sector jobs are poof, gone. We all need to make sacrifices. Everybody needs to give a little bit so we can receive so much more in return. Because together we struggle, struggle together. All but one group. Truth and fucking reconciliation. The First Nations. Everybody makes sacrifices in today's day and age, except them, because what? We're repaying a perpetual debt. Call me ignorant, call me an asshole, whatever. I'm probably uneducated in this. I'm not the smartest tool in the shed or the sharpest person to exist. See how I said that backwards? That's because I'm a fucking idiot. I'm probably an idiot about this. And there's probably people out there that are like, hey, Jasper, you're way out of line, man. Come on. I'm just fucking talking. I'm just a regular dude that sees it. And I see that together we struggle together on rinse and repeat everywhere you go. Social media, the news, the bald guy from CBC. Everybody needs to make sacrifices. Our liberal government saying we need to make sacrifices. Kearney, we need to make sacrifices. Trudeau, we need to make sacrifices. Everybody needs to make sacrifices, except the fucking First Nations. We all need to work together so we can build Canada together. Together we build Canada. Except the First Nations. They get veto power. 99% of Canada can agree. You can have Pierre Poilievre, Justin Trudeau, and Mark Carney sitting together at a table going, are we in agreement? We're in agreement. Shake hands. Awesome. Jagmeet Singh could be there too for dramatic effect. Elizabeth May could be like, you know what? Sure. Yeah, we all agree on the pipeline. I don't like oil and gas, but we need to make money. We need to use our resources. Everybody across the political spectrum, everybody in Canada could like show up and be like, yeah, okay, fuck it. Finally, we're doing it. And then the First Nations can be like, no, we don't want it. And we all just go back to struggling. Not together, of course. Because apparently veto power means veto power and we just can't do anything about it. It's weird. And I don't know if I have the answer to it. This is just a guy talking into a microphone, into a camera, bitching and complaining, seeing what he sees and be like, this is a problem. I don't have the answers. Don't come to me for the answers. I'm not the smartest tool in the shed or the sharpest person around. Okay. I don't have the answer to this. I don't know if anyone has the answer. Maybe you do down in the comments and you just don't have a platform or a voice to be able to put it out there. But I think this is a problem because we're all taught about First Nations in school and we're all literally Truth and Reconciliation is a course in school, like a mandatory course. And all that just like gets blown out the window when you have nation building projects like this that are completely held up by First Nations. So like what's the point? What's the point of any of this?
Mr. Wilkinson, the consumer carbon tax is gone. The emissions cap, there's a pathway to never implementing that thing spelled out in the budget. There's a willingness now to consider lifting the moratorium on tankers on the north coast of BC over the objections of the BC government and a lot of the coastal First Nations. And there's reports we're being told of a clean electricity regulation carve out for Alberta in this MOU. Many of the pillars of the environmental agenda of the last 10 years gone. In the words of one MP I spoke with, in the singular obsession of trying to satisfy Daniel Smith. I mean, how comfortable are you with that as a minister who was part of a lot of this, or former minister who was part of a lot of this, and someone who represents a British Columbia riding?
Well, look, I think the Prime Minister's been quite clear that, this kind of a project's not going to get imposed over British Columbia, and it will require the support of significant proportion of First Nations that are impacted. So my expectation is the MOU actually says that those kinds of conversations need to be engaged. So am I concerned about that? No, because at the end of the day, the Prime Minister has made clear the position that those issues need to be engaged and addressed. In terms of the climate stuff, I mean, for sure, there have been some changes, some of which, like the consumer carbon price, as somebody who is a supporter of that, I think it's unfortunate because it was good public policy, but it was done because Mr. Poilievre had created such a toxic environment around it that it just wasn't worth that kind of a debate in the public sphere. But it is true to say that the government is going to need to come forward with an updated climate plan that actually demonstrates how it's going to continue to make progress. We should all expect that when we put together a plan that there will be adjustments to it. I mean, I helped to create the first plan that showed how we would meet a target in this country, but I didn't think that everything that we put into there was gospel, that at some point there would be some changes that would be made. It's incumbent now on the government to sort of talk about how it's going to move forward on a number of these issues. That's going to be up to Minister de Bruzen and the Prime Minister. But I would note that the Prime Minister reiterated in the House of Commons last week in response to a question from Elizabeth May that Canada remains committed to working towards the climate targets that we established. Right. And that
the climate targets, that on its own is absolutely insane. Imagine you're in school, okay? And there's like 1,000 kids and it's all time for lunch, and you go to the cafeteria and everyone starts taking out their tuna sandwiches, their eggs, their steak sandwich, their leftover lasagna, their pasta, their spaghetti. Okay, some people are eating candy, whatever. And all of a sudden, one person in there, one person, we're not talking about allergies. We're not talking about life-threatening allergies or allergies at all. We're talking about a personal preference. One person in a school of 1,000 people is a vegan. Okay. We got to save the animals. We have to save the animals. Don't eat the meat. We have to save the animals. So now a new policy is set in place at school. Everybody has to eat vegan or you can't eat at all. Because one person is a vegan and we all have to bend the knee to their ideologies. Not based off of allergies. It's not like a peanut allergy. Okay. Just based off of their preference. That's how I view this whole climate shit. Canada contributes at most 1.5% of the world's global emissions. A minority. Okay. 1 out of 100. 1.5 out of 100. Okay, so maybe it's not one person at school. Maybe it's 10 people or 15 people at school that eat vegan. Now all of a sudden 1,000 people in total have to stop eating meat and have to bend the knee and eat vegan because 15 out of 1,000 people are choosing to do that. It's no longer about free will. It's no longer about what you want. It's a mandate. And I just don't get how Canada is actually making a global difference by pushing this green energy. I don't know if there's anybody in my viewer base that actually likes renewable energy as much as I do. I fucking love it. I love solar power. I don't know if you knew that about me. I lived in a van. Okay, picture a big U-Haul box van. And there was solar panels that I installed up on the roof. Big, massive picnic table size solar panels. And I put the wires down through the van into a charge controller, into lots of lithium ion batteries. And I lived in that van, converted on the inside with a shower, with walls, with kitchen cabinets, a double sink, even a wood stove. I lived in that van for 5 years, and my entire life was based off of solar power on Vancouver Island. That's comedic gold. For those who don't know, Vancouver Island is almost like the movie Twilight. You know how many times you've seen the sun in the movie Twilight? Once or twice out of 4 or 5 movies. It doesn't exist. It's so funny. It's so funny. It's like saying I'm in a wheelchair and I designed my house to have 3 flights of stairs. It's ironic, but I did it for 5 years. I lived in a van where my life was powered by solar. I couldn't run my water pump if I didn't have battery. I couldn't power my fridge and my freezer if I didn't have battery. Now, I attached my batteries through a thingy-mabobber to my truck. So when I'd start my van, I'd drive, it would actually trickle charge my batteries. So I was using oil and gas, so it wasn't like fully, right, off grid in the sense of renewable energy. But I love solar panel. I love it. In fact, my dream is to take that van, remove the wheels, and plop it on a piece of property, and then get way more solar panels, get a well, get a septic, and then just live off grid. I love that stuff. I love solar panels. I love it. I love lithium ion batteries. I also realize that forcing that on an entire country is kind of retarded, because oil and gas is also kind of needed. I drive a truck, a Hemi truck. I turn the key, it's loud as fuck. It's awesome. It's very reliable. I've also driven electric vehicles. I love electric vehicles. I've driven a Tesla. They're so much fun. You put your foot down, woo, you go. It's like a roller coaster. It's a toy. It's fun, but it also doesn't go very far, and it can't do the things that my truck does. And electric vehicle trucks, I actually test drove one because I was genuinely curious, and it's not comparable to my truck. My oil and gas truck, my Hemi, beats a regular electric vehicle truck 9 times out of 8, 11 times out of 10. I love renewable energy. I love solar panels. It was my life for 5 years. I literally couldn't turn my fridge and freezer on unless I had solar. Like, it was like playing cat and mouse. It was so much fun. It was very difficult, but it was a lot of fun, and it was kind of rewarding. But I also realized, using common sense, that it's not sustainable for everybody at all times. Like, there was a lot of difficulties for certain periods of my van life experience, where if I were to scale it, it would have been an absolute nightmare. But because it was just me and my dogs, it was okay. We made it through. I'm so disappointed with this narrative that Canada can fix the world with clean and renewable energy, when that's just not the case. We have too many people living in way remote areas that it just doesn't make sense. All the people living up in northern areas where there's like a lot of snow, that starts to complicate things a lot. One thing that I ran into when I was living in a van powered by solar was keeping my batteries warm. They actually can't really go below freezing, or else it starts to get into some complications. Like, you can't really charge them, or they can't really be used properly. So you need battery warmer kits. Now, some batteries come with those kits, but again, when you start scaling, you get out of just a personal use in a freaking van and you scale it to like a house or a city or a province. It starts to get very, very complicated. And I I just see where this is going because I have firsthand experience. I think it's bad. I don't like how we're pushing this as like a mandatory, like Canada will solve all the world's problems by going green energy when we contribute 1.5% of the world's global emissions. I think that we're being gaslit by these people, and it doesn't feel good.
It can be done in many different ways.
But I wonder, you know, David Eby has made it very clear that, in his view, this attempt at whatever the MOU does to accelerate the push towards a bitumen pipeline, it threatens the very real economic development ambitions of the coastal First Nations and the government of British Columbia. That the social license they have gotten with a lot of those First Nations groups for pipelines, for LNG pipelines and LNG facilities, critical minerals potentially, power lines through territory, that rests on the integrity and the maintaining of the oil tanker ban. Do you agree with David Eby's characterization of how fragile this is and how this is kind of the oil tanker ban is like a key Jenga piece in the whole plan? It could come out and it could all fall down. Is it truly at that level of risk here?
Well, I think Premier Eby's concerns are legitimate. I mean, the government of British Columbia has spent a lot of time working towards enabling the development of a number of LNG facilities that have, you know, created significant investment in this country and probably will create significant additional investment in this country. And the coastal First Nations in particular have, you know, worked with their communities to gather the support that allows them, in many cases, to participate economically in those developments. So when Premier Eby raises concerns about disturbing that, I think we should take him at his word that this is a legitimate concern. And I've heard some similar things from coastal First Nations themselves. That doesn't mean you can't engage a conversation about what underpins those concerns and whether there are ways to address them. I'm not saying.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, they've already made their statements. And when you summarize it, no new decision is being made. They want complete control only on their terms. Yes to LNG, no to oil pipelines. Like the First Nations are not moving on that at all. Veto power. Interesting, huh? Okay. On to the next one. Oh, this is such a headache. It's such a headache. Going through this over and over. Like they're doing their media tour. They're trying to push the fact that maybe there's a chance that Canada can work with First Nations. Like, no, there isn't. It's never worked out. They get veto power. And I don't know the answer. Would you remove their veto power and just steamroll through First Nations communities to do what needs to be done for the betterment of Canada? I don't know. Is that morally and ethically the right thing to do? I don't have those answers. I'm not that guy. That's above my pay grade. I don't get paid to make those decisions. I can just sit here behind a screen in my own basement and spew some crazy ideas, but doesn't mean they're right. But what I see happening, I know for a fact, is a little bit messed up. We're now going to take a look at the same minister on CTV. Let's have a look.
Do you think that your government, Mr. Wilkinson, has adequately consulted your province on the prospect of a coastal pipeline or whatever ends up being involved in this MOU?
Well, first of all, it's pretty hard to say because nobody really knows what's in the MOU. And I think it behooves us all to sort of wait until it is announced. But I do think it's important to engage with the province of BC, to engage with First Nations that may be impacted by this project or any other project. I do know the Prime Minister has spoken to Premier Eby, but I expect that there will need to be many more conversations.
Do you think the Prime Minister should have consulted more with the Premier? And I ask that only in the framing of what Premier Eby has said to me and others, which is that he feels woefully under-consulted, that both he and coastal First Nations have been left out of a discussion that he says will directly impact both the province and those First Nations. I know that you're very familiar with both. Do you think there should have been more discussion with those two parties?
Well, look, I know there have been some discussions, and I think a lot of it depends on what is in the framework document that's released. My understanding is that that the government of Canada, and certainly the Prime Minister has said this on many occasions, is saying that the province of BC will need to be engaged in these conversations going forward as part of this whole process, and certainly the First Nations will need to be involved, and there will need to be significant support on the part of First Nations. So I wouldn't want to get too tied up in should it have been before this or should it be after this. At the end of the day, those conversations have started to take place, and they will need to take place in earnest going forward.
Premier Eby's.
I don't have the clip pulled up because I'm just thinking about it now. But just to highlight the relationship between the Liberals and the First Nations, there are I forget what it's called. It's a First Nations assembly where they're in a big hall and First Nations get to go up on the stage and talk about stuff. There are times where Justin Trudeau and even other Liberal ministers that are there on behalf of Justin Trudeau would show up to these things. And the First Nations chiefs would say, hey, fuck you, man. You sit here in front of the public on cameras and you talk about how we're trying to work together, yet you've never stepped foot on our land to talk to us in our homes. You've never come to us. You always make us come to you, and then you gaslight everybody and try to make it seem like everything is good. And some of these clips in the past have gone insanely viral, and I've shared them. I wish I had it pulled up. If I was more organized, I probably would have. Or you could just take my word for it, or you can go and Google it yourself. But there are many, many times, several times, where First Nations chiefs have lashed out publicly at these First Nations assemblies, specifically at the Liberal government. Because if I'm quoting properly, I think this was in I don't think it was in 23. It might have been in 24. Maybe it was in 2023, where the First Nations chiefs accused Trudeau of never actually stepping foot on their specific band's territory to speak with the chiefs. And that's kind of weird. Like, if you're the leader of a country and you're trying to go and talk to like British Columbia, you would then go to British Columbia and talk with the leaders. If you're the leader of a country and you want to talk to the American president, you would go to America, like probably the White House, and talk with the American president. Even Putin flew out of Russia to Alaska for the first time since a bunch of sanctions were put on him several years ago. Like, that's what you do when you're meeting with other people, is you go to them. And so the Prime Minister probably should have gone to meet with the First Nations people. So the First Nations people, maybe not every single band, but several bands that we've seen, don't like Justin Trudeau. But it wasn't specifically Trudeau as a person, it was the party, but probably also Trudeau as a person, because that's quite easy to do, is to dislike Justin Trudeau as a person. And now we're kind of seeing this translate into like Mark Carney, where the First Nations are like, yeah, you're a new guy, but we still don't like your party and we don't like you guys. So unless Mark Carney is able to pull out some crazy deal out of his ass, the way Trump is able to do, I don't see how First Nations are going to bend the knee to a Liberal government, which they've historically proven to dislike time and time and time again. Now, this isn't all bands, but it's a significant amount of them. And for a band chief to publicly say to the government, like on a live broadcast, to call them out and say that they don't have balls for, like, that's a real quote. You don't have balls for, coming to us. Like, you've never come to us. You're a wuss. Okay. These are real things that have been said, if I'm not mistaken. That's a lot of damage that's been done to the relationships between the federal government, the Liberal government, and these First Nations. And how does that translate into right now? Like, what does that mean? That, well, the federal government's now in a position where they need the cooperation from these exact bands and First Nations groups, and they're not getting it. Because why would they? Why would they? Would you like to cooperate with the Liberal government after they've mistreated you for so long? Probably not, right? Probably not.
Point though, and I take yours on, would have, should have, when we don't have the formal details of it announced, though many of them have already, I should say, been leaked to various media outlets. Premier Eby's point is that just the mere speculation of it, without concrete details from your government, has raised the prospect of big projects that he has buy-in on, LNG namely, because he says of the tanker ban, for example, like he says that all of this is putting that at risk, and that to him is very real. Again, I'll put to you, Mr. Wilkinson, like, should your government have done more to avoid that prospect?
Well, as I say, there have been some conversations. There will need to be more conversations. I hear Premier Eby's concern, and I think his concerns are heartfelt. And certainly he has worked very hard to accelerate the development of the LNG industry in British Columbia, which will benefit all of Canada, but certainly British Columbia and Alberta. I do think that it's important that we sit down and have those conversations moving forward and understand what those concerns are and determine whether or not they can be met. But, my understanding, based on everything that I have heard from the Prime Minister, is there would need to be significant support on the part of the province. There would need to be significant support on the part of the First Nations, and this would require, it would be significant incremental production, which means incremental emissions. That would need to be made consistent with a climate plan, and I'm sure that the government is working on that.
I haven't actually heard the Prime Minister say that any additions to emissions would have to fit into the climate plan. I don't actually know what your government's climate plan is anymore. You used to say that a lot about additional oil development or additional LNG development when you held that portfolio, but your government isn't saying that anymore. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, I think the Prime Minister did say that. I mean, in the House last week, he said that the government remained committed to the targets that were established under the Paris Agreement, understanding those are very difficult targets to meet and always have been. But certainly in the context of thinking about future developments, you would have to think about the emissions associated with those and look at ways in which you can actually ensure that they are incorporated if you're going to actually be serious about meeting your climate targets.
I take your point on what the Prime Minister said in the House. What I'm confused about, and I think a lot of Canadians who are concerned about the environment are confused about, is how exactly meeting those commitments will be possible when there is a long list at the moment of what your government plans to roll back: the consumer carbon tax, perhaps a full tanker ban, no emissions cap, no more, or paused at least for the meantime, EV standards. Like, what is your government's climate plan without any of that? How do you meet those targets without any of that?
Well, as I say, what was in the budget, the climate competitiveness thing, was not a climate plan, and the government going forward is going to need to come up with an updated climate plan that includes work that I did and others have done, but will also have additional elements. I think one thing that was important in the budget was the commitment to strengthening the industrial carbon price. That is a way where you actually can get incremental emissions if you do that right. But I think it's a fair question on the part of the environmental community as to where, what does the climate plan look like going forward? And I'm sure that the Minister of Environment and the Prime Minister are working on that and will come forward with that. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a legislative requirement under the Accountability Act that was put into place when I was the Environment Minister, where we actually are able to say what we're doing, where we're tracking to, and what we're going to do if we're not on track to get back on track.
Have they conveyed to you that I believe the requirement is by the end of the year, have they conveyed to you that there will be a plan announced? Because I have seen no public record of a commitment to release that.
I have not asked that question specifically, but I mean, it is a legislative requirement. I assume that the Minister of Environment is going to bring forward something.
Do you, in principle, I mean, you're in a unique position, right? We spoke to you so frequently in both your capacity as Minister of Environment, Minister of Energy, but you also are a member of Parliament in BC. Do you, in principle, support an additional pipeline to BC's coast, oil pipeline?
Well, I don't think we should rule things off the table before we have a conversation about what the issues are. That's not just about a pipeline. That's about a mine. That's about, a port facility, irrespective. It's trying to ensure what people's concerns are. Certainly emissions is a concern, and as I've said, it will need to be made consistent with Canada's approach to addressing climate change, but there are ways to do that. But it also needs to address some of the concerns that actually underlie the tanker ban. Like, at the end of the day, the tanker ban is a mechanism. Why did the tanker ban get put into place? And the moratorium before it. Like, people forget there's been a moratorium on the West Coast since 1972. There were two reasons. One was...
and this is what's the worst. This is the worst part of Canadian politics. is you were asked a very simple question. Do you support oil and gas pipeline to the West Coast? Like, should we keep that in the cards because we don't really have a way to another feasible way to get oil and gas from Alberta to the West Coast of British Columbia without a pipeline being there? And it's a yes or no question. He goes on to deflect and talk about the tanker ban and all that stuff. And it's just very annoying. It's very, very annoying, ladies and gentlemen, because the answer is simple. The answer is, if Donald Trump and American tariffs truly are the biggest threat to Canada, okay? Like, Canada is suffering. We know this. You know this. I know this. We're suffering economically. We need to make money, and we have a bunch of beautiful liquid gold in our ground, and we have to be able to do something with it because there's a market for it. Whether we want to use it for ourselves or not is irrelevant, because people out there are begging for it. Please, Canada, please sell us your liquid gold. We love you. Please, we'll pay way more money than we should for it. We need it. And Canada's answer is, yeah, let's take a look and see if we can even get it done. And we look to see if we can get it done. And there's no actual clear-cut answer on whether we can actually get it done or not. Climate initiative, tanker ban, deflect, buzzword. It's a yes or no. Are we going to get it done? And if the answer is unanimously yes, where it should be, because our biggest threat is not Russia, it's not China, it's not aliens, it's America, American dependence. Because right now we can only really sell oil and gas to America because we don't really have a proper way of like exporting it. Not yet. We don't even have like refineries properly set up in Canada. We sell it to America for really cheap and they sell it back to us. It's the most retarded business deal I think we've ever really seen. But we have a real opportunity for a not retarded business deal to actually make real money with other countries, which you should probably support, because don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? This isn't the Easter Bunny. You got to be able to diversify. Same thing with you when you invest in stocks. Sure, invest in the S&P 500, invest in the American broad index funds, but also invest in international funds, because we know there's like a market crash that happens every 8 years or 12 years or something like that. And if and when the American market plummets, which it does historically, at least you're invested in international stuff. So if we're diversifying our trade with other countries, then if the American market tanks, or if we can't rely on them for whatever reason, which is what we're being told right now, then at least we're selling oil and gas through our West Coast ports to like Japan and Asia and whatever. We're making money. If the threat was real, and if it really was as significant as what they say it is, Donald Trump and America, that threat, then we would be doing whatever we can to get the job done. Like, if there's an intruder on your property who is trying to destroy your home, you're probably going to do whatever you can to protect yourself, right? You wouldn't be like, well, let's leave it up to a vote. Hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, brother, hey, sister. Should we take immediate action? Should we defend ourselves? Yes, no, maybe. Oh, okay. Well, let's sit and talk about it as the intruder gets closer and closer. Like, if you're painting a picture for us that the biggest threat to Canada and our sovereignty and blah, blah, blah is America, then deal with it and get it done. That's it. No matter what the climate initiative is, no matter what green energy peace shit is going on, it's either a threat or it isn't a threat. Deal with it accordingly. And this level of gaslighting, this level of going in circles, false hope, talking points, buzzwords, it's very annoying. And I'm starting to see through it more and more every day. And it's actually quite exhausting. And my tolerance for it is significantly less, which is why I say it's fucking retarded, because I have no other patience to be a good little boy and say, well, this just isn't the right way. We got to deal with it another way. No, the time for those words are gone. It's fucking retarded. The liberal government is fucking retarded. That's just how it is. I'm sorry if that offends you. Go somewhere else if you want cleaner words. But my tolerance levels are gone. They're gone. Because the biggest threat to this country is not Donald Trump. It's our liberal government. And my tolerance for being nice and friendly with clean words, that's gone out the window. I don't know. That's to me, that sounds absolutely fair. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just losing my marbles. I don't know. Probably a bit of both. But let me know what you guys think. Are you running out of patience? Are you seeing through all the bullshit? Do you also think that the liberal government is a little cuckoo, a little bit retarded? Let me know where you guys stand on that one. Anyways. Anyways, I don't know. I'm so fed up with this. You know, I'm just fed up. I'm just sick and tired of being lied to and gaslit in front of my face every day by the media. Like I was in the fucking military. Like I pledged allegiance to the Queen, to my country, like country before anything else. There was a time in my life where I could have literally been told, hey, dude, your job today, my job today is to go and die. Like there was a time where I put myself in that position by being in the military. So yeah, like I love this country, but fuck. The country is proving not to love us. At least the leaders are proving not to love us. They don't seem to care about us. And that part is really annoying. It's very annoying. Because I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm not saying that I'm right 100% of the time. I'm probably very rarely right. But I'm seeing what's happening. And I'm just like, this is craziness. Who is voting for this? Who is wanting this? You have to be a dumbass to want this, right? To want the outcome that we consistently are getting? I don't know. Anyways, let's take a look at question period, because that always calms our nerves, eh?
Internationally, I would like to congratulate Director José Laprate, President Martine Allary, and the entire Relavai team. Every day, their respectful engagement with parents provides support to children, allowing them to thrive and to grow into accomplished citizens ready to enrich the Quebec society of tomorrow. Happy 40th and vive les Relavai.
The honourable member for Milton East, Halton Hills South.
Hear ye, Mayor Gordon Krantz of the town of Milton is celebrating his 60th year of elected office. First elected as municipal councillor in 1965, and then as mayor when I was just 2 years old. Mayor Krantz is Canada's longest serving mayor, having served under 10 prime ministers. Mayor Krantz has guided Milton through 4 decades of managing growth and modernization. His leadership, vision, and commitment has positioned Milton as one of the most educated, diverse, and dynamic communities in the country. And I, Mr. Speaker, have the distinct honor of having served as one of Mayor Krantz's municipal councillors, my first elected office back in 2018. Whether it's playing cards on Sunday afternoons at local Legion Branch 136 or capturing the moment, cutting the ribbon at a new business, Mayor Gord is quintessentially Milton. Congratulations to Mayor Krantz and his family on this incredible milestone, a testament to the power of public service that stands the test of time.
The honourable member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, food costs are rising 40% faster in Canada than the United States, and families in Essex are feeling the pressure. My riding is one of Ontario's most productive agriculture regions, but after 10 years of a Liberal government, the Canadians who produce our food are struggling to pay for it. Farmers have been clear. Scrap the industrial carbon tax. Instead of the Liberals continue to drive up the price of fertilizer and farm equipment, making it harder for farmers to grow, ship, and sell food. When 80.6% of Canadians say that food is their top expense pressure, this government should listen and take action by cutting hidden taxes to bring down costs and make life more affordable for families. Unlike the Prime Minister, who says, "Who cares?" to Canadians, along with my Conservative colleagues, I care about the families of Essex.
The honourable member for Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, this fall season brings fresh momentum, new opportunities, and renewed energy to the Yukon. Just last week at Yukon's annual Geoscience meeting, the mood in the room could not have been more positive. You ask why, Mr. Speaker? Because Budget 2025 is replete with investments in the North, like the $1 billion Arctic Infrastructure Fund, the $2 billion Critical Mineral Sovereign Fund, the expanded Critical Mineral Exploration Tax Credit. Add to that our government's ambitious Build Canada homes to ensure Northerners have access to homes they can afford, and so much more. With the recent referral of the Yukon BC Grid Connect to the Major Projects Office, we're also setting the stage for the longer term. We know how important clean power is to realize the full potential of Canada's Northwest, including the Yukon. Before closing, Mr. Speaker, may I send congratulations to newly elected Premier Curry Dixon and his cabinet staff, just sworn in on Saturday. I know we'll all be working together on priorities and opportunities for the Yukon. Let's keep Yukon strong, Canada strong.
The honourable member for Saskatoon University.
The Canadian taxpayer is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the European Space Agency. Canadians could be expected to wonder why so much of their money is being spent on the European Space Agency and their private corporation, Harwell Science. But don't worry, we know the answer. 50% of the Harwell Science Innovation Facility is owned by Brookfield. That explains it. As always under this government, if it benefits Brookfield, it happens. But as with so many other projects, from timber to pipelines, if it doesn't benefit Brookfield, then it goes nowhere.
The honourable member for Vaudreuil.
158 years, Canadians have elected members of Parliament. They've travelled to Ottawa to take their seats in these chairs and make decisions that have helped build the greatest country in the world. Today was an honour to turn that work over, if only temporarily, to bright and inspiring grade 6 students from Forest Hill Elementary in St. Lazare. Under the guidance of Principal Laurent, dedicated teachers and volunteer parents, 106 students took their seats to become MPs for the day. They shared what Canada meant to them, what issues were most important, and we're proud to share ideas on how to build an even better Canada in the years ahead. The discussion was insightful and served as a reminder of our true purpose in this place, to leave a better Canada for our children than the one we ourselves inherited.
11 o'clock, but
Mr.
I need a
Speaker, I
beer.
want to sincerely thank the Forest Hill teachers and students who joined me today. This is your house, and your ideas, your
Hi,
energy,
everybody,
and
it's
your
your
thoughtfulness
house, too.
are always welcome here.
Fucking Muppet.
The honourable member for Haldimand Norfolk.
This morning at a multi-party parliamentary prayer breakfast, I shared from Mark 4:35, the moment when the disciples, caught in a violent storm, cried out to Jesus, "Don't you care?" These were experienced fishermen, but even they were overwhelmed by the winds and the waves. Today, many Canadians feel the same. They see economic uncertainty, rising unemployment, social tensions, immigration pressures, and new tariffs creating instability in their lives. The storms are real, and people are looking to their leaders for reassurance and results, not indifference. When the Prime Minister promises Canadians a deal on tariffs, a response of "who cares" is exactly what the people fear in the middle of an economic storm. In turbulent times, leadership is not just about expertise. Leadership begins with compassion, the willingness to see the storm that others are facing, and the courage to stand with them in it.
The honourable member for Eglinton Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a world full of noise, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply talk to one another. I recently met with Pete Bumbachi, a constituent of mine in Eglinton Lawrence and an advocate for GenWell, Canada's Human Connection movement. GenWell champions social health, the idea that our relationships, connections, and interconnections with one another are essential not only to our mental and physical well-being, but also to the health of our society. This week is Talk to a Stranger Week, and I want to encourage Canadians to take a moment to look up from their phones and start a conversation with someone new. You never know the difference a simple hello can make. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
More questions. That's all right.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Pierre Poilievre.
Who cares, Mr. Speaker? Monsieur le Président, le Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker,
The Prime Minister promised that he would negotiate in our favor before July 21st, but there haven't been any wins. The Americans have doubled tariffs, even though the Prime Minister has made concessions, getting rid of the digital services tax, the counter tariffs. He's even backed down on softwood lumber, but he got nothing in return, except for one thing, a contract from President Trump for Brookfield, an $80 billion contract. Is getting more money for his business the win that he promised Canadians? The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-US trade. Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows very well, Canadians did not place their trust in his judgment when it came to standing up to President Trump. They didn't trust him not to just sign any old agreement. What we've done is to work hard with the U.S. to find an agreement that will be in the interest of both industries and workers in Canada. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we are taking more measures to help Canadian workers and industries.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, do you want the good news or the bad news? Well, in these times, I guess we'll have to start with the good news. It's all we've got. The good news is that David Eby, the Premier of BC, has absolutely no constitutional authority to block a pipeline. The bad news is that this Prime Minister does. Under Section 9210A of the British North American Act, works between provinces are exclusively the federal government's responsibility. So will the Prime Minister stop hiding behind the powerless Premier, get out of the way, and approve a pipeline to the Pacific today?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'd invite the member opposite to buy a ticket to Calgary tomorrow to see how a federal government works with the provincial government to build Canada strong.
Leader of the Opposition.
Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will wave around in the air a worthless piece of paper that he says that the Premier of BC can veto any time he wants. Here's the political problem he has. Canadians want a pipeline. They know it's the best way to get our resources to market going around the United States of America, but his Keep It in the Ground caucus is standing in the way. Why doesn't he stand up to them and stand up for Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Maybe the member opposite should explain to his constituents why the Premier of Alberta wants to stand beside our Prime Minister and talk about how to build Canada strong.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister claimed that he did not have the power to approve a pipeline. Well, too bad for him. The Constitution is public. 9210A says that it is exclusively a federal responsibility. He happens to be the Prime Minister, and he asked us to pass emergency legal powers in C5 to give him the personal authority to overturn any regulation in order to get the project done. In other words, this government has the exclusive power. He has the exclusive legal authority. Will he match that authority with responsibility and approve a pipeline to the Pacific today?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, what this Prime Minister is doing is leading. He's leading on building national projects. He's leading on building port capacity. He's leading on making Canadian steel, lumber, aluminum, and various commodities more available for homes, for big projects, to put people, unionized people, men and women from every part of this country to work building our great country. That's what this Prime Minister is doing. He's leading. What is the Leader of the Opposition doing, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What am I doing? I'm standing in the House of Commons.
Fair play, Pierre. That was good.
Where's Waldo, Mr. Speaker?
That's good. That's good. That's good. I like
We
that.
know that he's in Ottawa today. We know that he's in the.
I think
You can't comment on the whereabouts of another.
close to the line there that we're actually
MP.
stepping over it. So if the Honourable
It's funny though.
Leader would continue, but maybe
We like it when Pierre crosses that line a little bit.
Mr. Speaker, I think we're finding out that if you're not there, you don't care.
All right. Throw some W's down.
The Prime Minister said, who cares that Canadian workers are losing their jobs because he broke his promise to get a deal? We care. Why doesn't he show up and prove he does too?
Carney's probably hiding behind the curtain that Shear hid behind.
I invite the member opposite to buy a ticket and come to Calgary tomorrow and see who cares.
Didn't he just say that?
Well, we've gone from elbows up to who cares under this Prime Minister. Remember, he said he would negotiate a win and he would get a deal by July 21st. Well, still no win, still no deal. He's made concession after concession. He backed down on counter tariffs, on the digital services tax, on the legal action against softwood lumber, and he got nothing in return. Well, one thing. Brookfield, his company, got $80 billion in contracts hand-signed by the president just 20 days after the two met. Is that what he meant when he said he would negotiate a win with Trump?
That's a good find.
Mr. Speaker, I know it's an inconvenient truth for the Leader of the Opposition that Canada right now, today, has the best deal of any trading partner of the United States. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? It's not good enough for Canadian workers, and it's not good enough for Canadian businesses. So unlike the Leader of the Opposition, who would have signed any bad deal put in front of him, the Prime Minister didn't do that. We said we would do the work to support Canadian workers and Canadian industries. We would buy Canadian, be our own best customer, and then negotiate a good deal with the United States.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, in 1995, a Liberal Prime Minister tried to do a fast one in Quebec. Essentially,
that was good, ladies and gentlemen. That was good.
Hiding things.
Throw some W's down for Pierre, man.
Will another Liberal Prime Minister once again do the same thing to the provinces in Quebec?
Pierre needs to do that more.
Based on a mandate, based on a
not just for me, not for me at all. Even though I very much like that.
Trade.
But for Canadians, Canada deserves that level of enthusiasm.
To benefit American shareholders and himself.
That's what turned me on to Pierre. No homo. You know, like seeing him do that was like, oh yeah, I like that.
Refugees and citizenship.
That's my guy.
I'd like to thank my colleague for the question.
It seems like the old Pierre is back.
I can say for all Canadians and especially for Quebecers that I'm not focusing on things that have happened in the past. Instead, I am concentrating on what we can do to make our immigration system strong and to attract the best talents in the world for both Quebec and Canada. Under the Canada-Quebec agreement, Quebec is the one that selects its own permanent immigrants. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, I'll have to make my question clearer or make it clear who I'm asking the question. I will have to ask the Minister of Canadian Heritage, the former leader of EJECTED, is he comfortable with the fact that the Prime Minister is trying to get around Canada's legislation in order to push an oil agenda to the detriment of the climate? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture. Mr. Speaker, my colleague's question might be more relevant if he hadn't authorized drilling on Anticosti Island, right in the middle of the St. Lawrence. If he hadn't made it so that in Quebec, 50% of the oil is Albertan, all due to the leader of the Bloc Québécois. And perhaps what he's saying would be a bit more relevant if under our budget negotiations, the Bloc Québécois had brought forward a single measure to protect the environment. They did not bring in a single proposal for the environment.
Honestly, though,
that's what we got from the Bloc Québécois. The Honourable Member, had we brought forward an environmental measure, that would have meant that there was one in the budget. The Minister of Heritage, the former Minister of the Environment, he is a Quebecer, he was a member of the Liberal caucus under Justin Trudeau. Will he solemnly promise to Quebecers and people from BC that he promises, as an environmentalist who used to rappel up buildings in Ontario, that none of these projects will go forward in Quebec or BC without the consent of the province, of Indigenous groups, and social accessibility? Will he promise that that will never happen without that consent? The Honourable Government House Leader. The answer, Mr. Speaker, is yes. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Well, Mr. Speaker, this morning we learned in La Presse that the Liberal member for Laval-Les-Îles is denying that he was involved in the Quebec Liberal Party's leadership race, although he did have a certificate for raising funds. Does the member know that he needs to ask a question about matters that affect the federal government? I think it's pretty clear that my question is about a member that is here across the way, and I think my question is in order. My question is very clear. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that no member of the Liberal caucus has broken federal or provincial laws?
Have some respect, Darrington. Calling the speaker by his first name. You have done.
Je vois pas que ça touche vraiment. I don't think this has to do with any matter of federal government policy. This is a matter of provincial legislation. That was raised in the question, so I don't think that we can allow this question.
Ooh.
De Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles, une deuxième tentative.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking about federal legislation. Let's recall that the former parliamentary leader of the Quebec Liberal Party, Mauro Whiskey, said to Pablo Rodriguez that there were dubious shenanigans happening in Ottawa. I really think that this is pushing it. This is a matter of unproven rumors. This has nothing to do with the federal government's policies. I cannot allow this question.
Whoa!
Mr. Speaker, now we see that the Liberals want to move on to a cover-up.
South Innisfil.
They're trying to ask a question and they're not allowing it.
Says Canadians need to sacrifice more and accept a lower standard of living and quality of life, while he says, who cares about critical trade talks with the U.S.? Acting more like an advance team for Brookfield and standing up for Canadians. Everywhere he goes, a deal for Brookfield follows while tariffs stay in place or go up. We learned this week that the Prime Minister stands to make millions in bonuses from Brookfield's success. Why does the Prime Minister have his elbows up for him and his Brookfield buddies, but says who cares about Canadian businesses and working families affected by tariffs?
Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Since Prime Minister has taken office, that's exactly what he's done. In fact, we stood up for Canadian companies and workers all across this country, and just in a few minutes, the Prime Minister will do it again. He'll stand up for Canadian companies, lumber companies, steel companies, and their hardworking union members that are fighting so hard to protect the economy of their region. Mr. Speaker, why don't they get on board and fight for Canadian families instead of for themselves?
The Honourable Member for Berwick South Innisfil.
So he shrugs off critical trade talks with a smug who cares. Here's something he can't shrug off and everyone should care about. Despite the conflict of interest and ethics screen he has on Brookfield, we found out this week that the Prime Minister met with Brookfield executives behind closed doors in his office in October, proving that his ethics screen is more like a smoke screen. The Prime Minister and Brookfield stand to gain millions from his policies. He knows he can't have any contact with Brookfield, but he met with them anyways. Why would he meet with Brookfield knowing he's barred from having any contact with them?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
The Prime Minister, in a few minutes, will be doing his job. He'll be standing up for steel workers.
He's not currently doing his job, but in a few minutes he will be.
Depends on one thing, Mr. Speaker. Canadian steel, strong Canadian steels, and the workers who produce it, Mr. Speaker. We are strengthening our steel industry, standing by our steel workers, Mr. Speaker. We are investing in our workers. The Conservatives are investing in division.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands.
The Prime Minister has backed down on counter tariffs. He's backed down on the legal challenge against the softwood lumber tariffs, and he's saying, who cares? Now, Canadians thought that he got nothing in his negotiations. It turns out that he just got nothing for Canadians. After his last trip to the White House, he got an $80 billion nuclear deal for his company, Brookfield, which will see the Prime Minister's own personal investments increase in value. So why is it that the Prime Minister is trading our national interests for his own personal financial interests?
There you go. That's a phenomenal question.
Of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister is standing up today for workers across Canada, for BC Wood, building affordable housing across Canada with BC Wood. He's standing up to reduce the transportation costs across the country, to get BC Wood to build homes across Canada, and to bring steel from central Canada to the east and west more affordably. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is standing up for Canadians today, and we stand with him.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
The Prime Minister's not standing up. He's backing down, like he did on counter tariffs and like he did on the legal challenge for illegal softwood lumber tariffs. But it gets worse when it comes to this Prime Minister's record on Brookfield. We learned that the Liberals gave $500 million to the European Space Agency last week. Guess who owns 50% of the agency's site where the funds are going? None other than this Prime Minister's company, Brookfield. Again, seeing his own personal profits increase at the expense of Canadians, at the expense of Canadian investment and Canadian jobs. Why won't this Prime Minister put Canadians ahead of his own financial interests for once?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we are in a trade war. Well, the Conservatives
Then act
focus
like
on
it.
conspiracy theory. Our Prime Minister will stand up later today and make...
If you're in a trade war, then act like it and do what's necessary.
Not from the top, but the member may continue.
Mr. Speaker, we are in a trade war. While the members opposite engage in conspiracy theories, our Prime Minister will stand up later today and announce major new supports for the forest products industry. On top of $1.2 billion we've already announced, Mr. Speaker. That's how we stand up for Canada.
The honourable member for Kildonan, St. Paul.
Prime Minister talked a big game during the election, but has since failed to deliver on the U.S. trade deal. He's backed down on every Trump demand, from the digital services tax to counter tariffs to softwood lumber. He has delivered exactly zero results for Canadians on the U.S. trade war. But to be fair, he is seeing some results with his Brookfield shares, with the Americans coincidentally signing an $80 billion nuclear deal with his company a mere 2 weeks after his last U.S. visit. So why is it that under this Prime Minister, his financial investments are doing so well, but Canadian workers are being left behind?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservative leader is busy writing letters and debating himself, we're taking action to support Canadian steel and lumber industries and workers. We've got great news. This afternoon, we will introduce and announce new measures to further limit foreign steel imports to ensure that Canadian steel products and producers have better access to the domestic market, become our own best customer by building big with Canadian steel and Canadian lumber, increase protections for Canadian steel and lumber workers and businesses so they can adapt and thrive in this new global landscape. I urge the Conservative leader to tune in, get behind these
The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals want a second dirty oil pipeline. Even with Trans Mountain, they still want more. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. They want to sell more dirty oil to Asia.
Becker with a small
and
pecker.
thanks to C5, this pipeline will be able to ignore environmental assessments. It will fill up oil tankers, which will break the law and sail right through a protected marine area. Is there a single Liberal out there with a single shred of conscience? And if so, will they get up and say that this makes absolutely no sense? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, like I did yesterday, I will speak about the projects that our government is bringing forward in order to build Canada strong. As I said yesterday, if we want to talk about Quebec, we have the project in Saint-Michel-des-Seines in Quebec. This is a project that will continue to improve energy storage and electric vehicle batteries. Like all of our projects, we will respect provincial jurisdiction, and we will respect Indigenous rights. The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, it is very clear that these Liberals are ashamed. Every time the Liberals hear about their new dirty oil pipeline, they can't wait to change the subject. They know that it's a climate disaster. They know that it's a biodiversity disaster. And they know that there's also the chance of this turning into a financial debacle like Trans Mountain. And yet tomorrow they're going to watch their PM have a photo op with Danielle Smith to announce a pipeline that actually they can't defend at all.
Well, it's not even going to go through.
But the real question is, do they realize that they are right to be ashamed? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, quite the contrary. We are extremely proud to be contributing to building this country, to building opportunities throughout Canada, like renewable energy throughout the country, like significant projects like the mine my colleague just mentioned. It is the Bloc Québécois that wants to destroy our economy. With them, and then we also have the Conservatives who simply want to open the floodgates. As usual, between the two of them, the Liberal Party is finding the correct middle ground. The honourable member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Well, Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has gone from elbows up to who cares after he failed to sign an agreement on tariffs with the U.S. He backed down on the digital services tax, on counter tariffs, and on the legal measures on softwood lumber. We thought that he hadn't gotten a win, but the truth is that he didn't get a win for Canadians, but the Americans did sign an $80 billion nuclear agreement with the Prime Minister's business, Brookfield. And we know that when Brookfield gets richer, so does the Prime Minister. Why is this Prime Minister sacrificing the interests of Quebecers and Canadians so that he can profit? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister makes a decision, it's in the interest of all Canadians. That is why we've made several trips, although our colleagues don't like that. We've gone abroad to find new investment. That's why this afternoon there's an important announcement, and I hope our colleagues will be paying attention, because there will be announcements on softwood lumber and others to support our industries. That's what we're doing all the time. The honourable member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Well, Mr. Speaker, it takes a lot of work to manage all of the conflicts of interest having to do with Brookfield. The clerk of the Privy Council told us that teams are working around the clock to manage these conflicts of interest. He sold his Brookfield shares to be sure that he meets ethical standards, but the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff has told us that every day he's speaking to the Ethics Commissioner to ensure that everything is under control. The Prime Minister is ending up making tariffs go up every time he leaves the country. He can't seem to get a win for Canadians, and he needs dozens of people to regulate his conflicts of interest. Could he at the very least sell his Brookfield shares and stop being in a conflict of interest every single day? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, every time the Prime Minister leaves the country, it's in order to sign contracts with other countries, to find new markets for our products. Canada has what the world needs, and we will find new partners. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are pretending that they don't understand that, but actually, they do. And I am honestly saddened to see the pathetic partisan games they're playing. They understand this perfectly well, but they pretend not to.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to trade with the Americans, the Prime Minister went from elbows up to who cares? He backed down on counter tariffs and on legal challenges to softwood lumber and got nothing in return when he went to Washington in October. Well, nothing for Canadians. Days later, the Americans signed an $80 billion nuclear deal with the Prime Minister's company, Brookfield. When is this Prime Minister going to get a deal for Canadians and not just a deal for himself and his company?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Conservative cares is like an oxymoron or some pathetic joke, because we know those two terms are like oil and water. They just do not mix. Who cares is our government cares. We're the ones standing up for our industries. We're making more announcements today. The Prime Minister is stepping up with increased protections for our domestic market, with new support for our industries and workers in steel and softwood lumber, and additional commitments to buy Canadian so that we ensure that our workers and industries will thrive for generations to come.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, it is being reported that the government's MOU with Alberta includes a multi-billion-dollar investment in carbon capture with Pathways Alliance, the premier carbon capture company connected with Pathways Alliance is none other than Entropy, which is owned by none other than Brookfield. Is the reason it has taken the government so long to get a deal with Alberta because the Prime Minister has been busy getting a deal for Brookfield?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Speaker, I hate to break up their conspiracy theory, but Pathways is actually owned by 6 large oil companies, not Entropy.
Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, the very Brookfield fund that the Prime Minister stands to make millions of dollars in future bonus pay invested $300 million in Entropy. So, in the face of that, can the government provide the assurance that the deal negotiated by the Prime Minister will in no way benefit Entropy and, by extension, the Prime Minister's financial portfolio?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, here we go again, conspiracy theory. We're focused on building Canada. We're focused on working with Alberta to grow our natural resources in a responsible way in consultation with First Nations. That's how we build, not conspiracy theory.
For Mississauga Centre.
Mr. Speaker, young Canadians are ambitious and ready to build Canada's future. Budget 2025 makes generational investments in youth, from Canada's summer jobs and the student work experience program to expanded training and apprenticeship opportunities. These aren't short-term fixes. They're building blocks for a lifetime of success. While the opposition talks about cuts, this government's investing in the next generation. Could my good friend and colleague, the Minister of Jobs and Families, tell us how these programs turn ambition into opportunity for youth across Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much to the member for the question. I've had the opportunity of meeting with youth from across the country about the investments that we're making in Budget 2025, $1.5 billion, Mr. Speaker, for youth skills and training, but a very specific program. I met with some members and some members of youth from that member's riding who talked about their excitement and enthusiasm about seeing the Climate Youth Corps in this budget. Mr. Speaker, youth are worried about the climate, and now they have something to look forward to, participating in a program that allows them to use their skills and get paid for them.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Once again, Canadians are finding out that this Prime Minister is all sizzle and no steak. It turns out that his big pipeline announcement won't actually build a pipeline. He's going to have a meeting to set up a plan and then sign a piece of paper that talks about maybe one day putting shovels in the ground. And now he's handing a veto power to the NDP in British Columbia, allowing them to block the whole thing. The Prime Minister is in Ottawa, and we know that he's having trouble with his own caucus on this issue. And now he's ducking the only question that Canadians have. Was yesterday the start of a real pipeline, or just the latest episode in Announce Now and Deliver Never?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'd invite that member to get a ticket to Calgary tomorrow as well, and they could see why the Premier of Alberta thinks that things have never been so good in Canada.
For Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, that wasn't their answer yesterday. In fact, that isn't what the government said at all when they gave BC the veto in this House. Maybe they need to brush up on the Constitution, because Section 92 explicitly gives them the power to build pipelines, whether David Eby likes it or not. He also got the legal authority from this House when they asked us to pass Bill C-5 to circumvent their own regulations. And the only thing holding them back now is the same the premiers, will he get up and announce that he's going to build a pipeline?
Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, they seem determined not to want to see any development in this country. What we understand is it's federal government jurisdiction to approve a pipeline. We also understand that if a proponent wants to take it to the Major Projects Office, we expect them to work in conjunction with the affected jurisdiction and to consult First Nations. The Premier of Alberta understands that. Unfortunately, the members of the opposition don't.
Member for Calgary East.
The Prime Minister is all set to stage a fake pipeline photo op. What he'll probably do is hand the veto power to kill that pipeline to the BC Premier so he doesn't have to do it himself. Section 9210 of the Constitution says the federal government has the sole power to approve interprovincial projects and get shovels in the ground. The only person blocking the pipeline today is this Prime Minister. Will he stand up today and commit to repealing the tanker ban, axing the industrial carbon tax, and actually getting this oil pipeline built?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Pipelines have they built? Zero.
Mr. Speaker, we learned in the course of the last election campaign that the Leader of the Opposition had in fact never spoken to the Conservative Premier of Ontario, Mr. Ford. Now, I know the Leader of the Opposition to be someone who will look back, maybe look back too often, but he looks very backwards. He'll want to learn from that mistake, and I really suggest he not make that mistake again with the Premier of Alberta. Mr. Leader of the Opposition, please call Danielle Smith.
The Honourable Member for Calgary East.
With the amount of hot air coming out of that member's mouth, I'm surprised the Liberals haven't slapped a carbon tax on it. That answer was as fake as this Prime Minister's promises. Tomorrow, he'll make this grand show and pretend that he wants to get a pipeline built, but he'll hide behind someone else and get them to cancel it so he doesn't have to do it himself. The only person that can get this pipeline approved is this Prime Minister. Does the pipeline need to be sponsored by Brookfield so it actually gets built?
Unfortunately, that plane's going to get pretty full. I invite the member across to buy a ticket and come to Calgary and see what a federal government, how they can work with the provincial government to build Canada strong.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
This Prime Minister promised to build Canada strong, and yet when it comes to a pipeline to BC's coast, a pipeline that could end the U.S. monopoly on Canadian oil and bring billions of dollars into Canada, he transforms into a helpless bystander, hiding behind the NDP Premier in BC, ceding responsibility, abdicating leadership. The Constitution is clear. National pipelines are the sole jurisdiction of the federal government, and failing to act is a betrayal of our national interests. It's a betrayal of our workers, and it's selling out to the Americans. Will they build the pipeline, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Mr. Speaker, listen, today's good news for the many companies around the country who are working so hard to stay in business in the middle of this trade war. Whether it's steel, whether it's lumber, Mr. Speaker, we have their backs. And today we're going to talk more about what else we can do, not only to make sure that we protect these companies, but to help them grow their footprint, to sell their product to Canada and around the world. These guys cannot get their head out of the sand, literally, Mr. Speaker, for the sake of the companies right now who need our support. We'll do that work.
Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
You know, Mr. Speaker, maybe if Brookfield proposed a pipeline, we could actually get one backed by this Prime Minister. Let's be clear. A majority of Canadians support this pipeline. A majority of British Columbians support this pipeline. And as long as the world needs these resources, as long as the world needs oil and gas, until that last barrel comes out of the ground, as much of those resources as possible should come from right here in Canada. Why won't this government take up its mantle of leadership, deliver on what it promised, and get this pipeline built?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, news flash, we're in a trade war. We're in a trade war, and we don't get to choose the attitude and the response of other countries. We get to choose what we do in response to protect our industries here in Canada. tariff-impacted industries know across Canada that this government is standing up to protect their interests at every step along the way, whether the PM is overseas securing new investments to open up other markets, or whether he's offering new liquidity support and a package to help their businesses get through challenging times. We're steadfast in supporting Canadians.
The honourable member for Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna.
Mr. Speaker, on a pipeline to the Pacific, the Prime Minister finds himself in a dilemma of his own making. He, his ministers, his MPs say one thing in British Columbia and another in Alberta, and now he's perched squarely on the fence. Under Section 9210 of the Constitution, the decision is his government's alone. So will he side with the national interest to build a new pipeline, or will he bow to President Trump and keep a supplicant to American interests instead of diversifying our energy exports?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, maybe we should come at this another way. That member is a British Columbia member. Is he really suggesting, even given the constituents he represents from First Nations, is he really suggesting that the Government of Canada, without the consent of the province of British Columbia, without consultation with First Nations, is in a position to do that? I think he doesn't really mean that. I think he hasn't thought this through, and I think that member, once he does, will come back here and agree that the Government of Canada is pursuing the right path.
Member for Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna.
Arrogance of that answer, Mr. Speaker. He hasn't spoken to my constituents like I have on this issue. And right now, the only thing that is crossing provincial borders is this Prime Minister's indecision. A pizza shop is more productive than this Prime Minister because at least they know what business they're in and they know they need to deliver in a competitive marketplace. Section 9210 is clear. The power to act is his. So will the Prime Minister stop hiding behind premiers and process, or will he finally stand up for Canada, repeal the shipping ban, axe the industrial carbon tax, and build a new pipeline to the Pacific that is in the national interest?
The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-US trade.
Speaker, we want to thank our colleague in the Conservative Party for that manufactured indignation. And Mr. Speaker, we want to remind him and his colleagues in the Conservative Party that our government made a commitment to Canadians in the last election. It was an election campaign that perhaps they'd prefer to forget. We made a commitment to build the Canadian economy the right way, to build major projects again in a way that respects environmental commitments, our obligations to Indigenous peoples, and working with provinces and territories. They don't like it, Mr. Speaker. We like it, and we're proud to continue to do it.
Hear, hear. Honourable member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has stated that he wants to make Canada an energy superpower. Well, good news. This Prime Minister has the power to approve
I could see that coming. I could see that coming. And the business is called an applause line, but the member may start from the top.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has stated that he wants to make Canada an energy superpower. Well, good news. This Prime Minister has the power to approve a pipeline to the BC coast. Section 9210 of our Constitution
Why
gives
would he
the
say
Prime
the same
Minister
line over again and give the
jurisdictional or
Liberals the same
interprovincial
innovation?
projects like pipelines, not premiers, the Prime Minister. So will he stop passing the buck and approve an oil pipeline to the coast so that we can get this nation-building pipeline built?
The Prime Minister falsely. That's what he should have said.
This Prime Minister so far has referred $117 billion, $117 billion of projects to the MPO. Maybe this member can join us tomorrow in Calgary and see how this government, with the provinces, is building Canada strong.
Member for Pickering-Brooklyn.
Mr. Speaker, this week, as we begin the 60 days of activism against gender-based violence,
And with today marking Economic Abuse Awareness Day, we are reminded of the countless women, children, and families whose lives have been forever changed by abuse. And we are reminded that this violence doesn't always leave visible scars. It's often hidden behind closed doors, taking the form of control, isolation, and economic abuse that can trap someone in a dangerous situation. Could the Minister of Women and Gender Equality speak to how our government is working to recognize and combat economic abuse and support those who are living through this painful and often invisible form of violence?
The Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality.
I thank my honourable colleague for that question. As we mark the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we recognize the women who built this movement and the work that lies ahead. Our Economic Abuse Awareness Day, we recognize that gender-based violence can be physical, emotional, and psychological. That's why in our budget, we committed to working with financial institutions on a code of conduct to prevent economic abuse, helping them identify it and intervene safely. We will keep working together to end gender-based violence so women can live safely and free from fear. It's unfortunate the members opposite voted against this very measure.
The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister was asked this weekend whether he had spoken to Trump about trade, he said, "Who cares?" Apparently, there is not a burning issue. Well, Mr. Speaker, Conservatives care, and so do the thousands of Oshawa auto workers at the GM assembly plant who are losing their jobs because of the trade war. How can the Prime Minister look Oshawa auto workers in the eye and tell them he doesn't care and that their jobs don't matter?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, great news for the Conservatives.
No,
we
not this guy again.
This afternoon, we're going to announce new measures. Further limit foreign steel imports to ensure that Canadian steel products have better access to the domestic market. Become our own best customer by building big with Canadian steel and Canadian lumber. Increase protections for Canadian steel and lumber workers and businesses so they can adapt and thrive in this new global landscape. Mr. Speaker, that leader only cares about himself, squashing a caucus revolt, and thank you.
I mean, we have unfettered freedom of speech in this chamber. I recognize that, but I think both sides have to refrain from provocation. I think that can lead to disorder, which is unparliamentary. But the honourable member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, what is clear is that instead of negotiating deals for Canadian auto workers, what they care about, and this Prime Minister cares about, is being more interested in negotiating deals for Brookfield. Oshawa is set to lose thousands of jobs this January, even though this Prime Minister promised to negotiate a win. This is a burning issue for Oshawa auto workers, so why isn't it a burning issue for this Prime Minister?
Good question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report that I just recently met with the Unifor Union 222, that's the local chapter at the GM Oshawa plant, and they're happy with what our government is doing to support them. They've said that no deal is better than a bad deal. They've acknowledged our remissions framework and how we've adjusted it, and they are looking to us for leadership and more support. That's exactly what the Prime Minister is announcing later today for tariff-impacted industries.
Fucking wreck it, Ralph. Oh my goodness, man.
In support of our workers all across Canada. We won't stand down, and we won't take any lessons from
Member for Niagara Falls, Niagara on the Lake.
Speaker, after 8 months, this Prime Minister has gone from elbows up to who cares when it comes to trade issues with the United States. These comments spark concern in my community, particularly with the thousands of current and former GM workers in St. Catharines who worry about the future of their auto plant. GM has been in St. Catharines since 1929. I can tell you Conservatives care, Canadians care, the workers at these plants who depend on these jobs care. What's it going to take? Does Brookfield have to buy General Motors for this Liberal Prime Minister to finally care?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, we were elected on a plan to build big, Mr. Speaker, and I've met with auto workers from across the country, Mr. Speaker, and they know that we have their backs, Mr. Speaker. In a few minutes, the Prime Minister will be announcing more supports for the auto sector, more supports for the steel industry, because we have their backs. But you know what? More than that, Mr. Speaker, we're building big. We're going to build projects in national interest, homes that skilled workers will use to build across this country, Mr. Speaker. Will the Conservatives get on board?
The honourable member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, in 2011, the Harper Conservative government created the conditions for Driver Inc., an illegal scheme where trucking companies misclassify drivers as independent contractors to avoid paying payroll taxes.
Bro, this guy's still talking about Harper?
In the market and deprive the federal government of important revenue that it should be able to use to invest in Canadians. In Budget 2025, our new Liberal government took action to end
What
this
the hell
scheme.
is
Can the
this?
Secretary of State for the CRA please inform the House of the measures our government has taken to end Driver Inc.? Good.
Mr. Speaker, turns out that Sir John A. MacDonald was actually...
Mr. Speaker, in this historic budget, we are investing new resources to restore fairness to Canada's trucking industry after that party, the Conservatives, broke it. We will lift the moratorium on penalties for unreported fees for service, launch a dedicated compliance program, and expand information sharing with Employment and Social Development Canada. These measures will end the illegal Drivers Inc. scheme and level the playing field for companies that follow the law. The Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois both voted against Budget 2025. It's a shame that they didn't support tax fairness.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akiawenrak. Mr. Speaker, we know the Prime Minister is very familiar with Brookfield, but does he know about PACCAR? It's a business which has been making trucks for decades. Now, they've announced 300 layoffs. So those are people, even parents, losing their jobs. Why? Because of American tariffs. Now, I know that it's not Brookfield at stake, but can the Prime Minister go talk to the workers at PACCAR and tell them who cares? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised by the colleague's question. Yes, we are currently in a trade war, which, yes, was triggered by... Is everyone surprised? But, Mr. Speaker, it's very important to remain level-headed. We can't just sign whatever deal with the United States. As for PACCAR, Mr. Speaker, we're in communication with the business. We have solutions, and we'll work on solutions with the Government of Quebec. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A brief reminder.
For Vancouver, Kingsway.
To address the chair.
Mr. Speaker, before he was elected, the Prime Minister claimed to care about the climate crisis and protecting our lands and waters. BC Liberal MPs all said they supported the tanker ban in northern BC. Now we see them stealing pages from the Conservative playbook. Without consulting the Premier of British Columbia or First Nations, Liberals are reversing 50 years of protection for sensitive coastal waters, overriding the law and risking billions of dollars of economic activity. Why are Liberals sacrificing the BC coast and betraying the voters who sent them here?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, our Prime Minister was very clear yesterday, and I think it's important to highlight that we will make sure with any of the major projects that move forward that we work with affected jurisdictions. That means all of the provinces, and we will work with Indigenous rights holders, respecting their positions and their rights. We will make sure that we continue to build Canada as a strong country.
Guys,
strong
we're
future
in a
for our
trade
country,
war. We got to do
and
whatever
will
we
make sure
can
that
to
we do
help
it well.
fix this trade war, other than actually getting stuff done.
This concludes question period for today.
Oh my God.
Yes, yes it is.
Somebody just kick me in the nuts, would ya? Oh my goodness. We're in a trade war. We're in a horrible, horrible trade war with America, and everything's at stake, and we're all going to die and suffer the horrible fate and the wrath of Donald Trump. We got to stick together and do what we can so we can struggle together. Together we struggle against the trade war, the tariffs. Oh my God, it's horrible. It's the worst thing ever. But I don't know if we're going to get a pipeline built. I mean, like, the First Nations say no. The fuck? Oh my goodness. Anyways, that's the end of the video. That's the end of the stream. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Same time to watch the same garbage.